You're probably the problem. And before you get offended, I need you to realize that's the best news you'll hear all week. Because if you're the problem, you're also the solution. Do you know how powerful that is? I would rather be the problem than spend my entire life waiting for everybody else to magically become better people. That's such a helpless way to live. Somewhere along the way, people started treating accountability like an insult. It isn't. It's freedom. The day I stopped asking, why does this keep happening to me? And started asking, what am I participating in? My entire life changed. Those are two completely different questions. One makes you a spectator, the other makes you the author. And I like being the author. Here's something that bruised my ego a little. Every pattern I kept calling bad luck, I was quietly helping create. Not because I deserved bad things, not because other people weren't responsible for their own behavior, but because I had habits that kept inviting the same outcomes. I was over-explaining. I was ignoring tiny red flags because I wanted the fantasy more than the facts. I was assuming people had the same intentions I did instead of paying attention to what they consistently showed me. That's not kindness. That's wishful thinking wearing a cute outfit. I think one of the hardest pills to swallow is realizing that your intentions don't determine your results. Your patterns do. You can have the purest heart in the room and still keep ending up disappointed if your standards don't match your intentions. Psychology talks about repetition because our brains love familiarity. Familiar feels safe even when familiar isn't healthy. So if chaos feels familiar, you'll accidentally normalize chaos. If inconsistency feels familiar, you'll explain it away. You'll call it complicated, you'll call it bad timing, you'll call it potential. Meanwhile, your nervous system is quietly mistaking unpredictability for chemistry. And then you wonder why peace feels boring. That's not because peace is boring, it's because your brain hasn't practiced recognizing it yet. Also, can we retire the idea that being self-aware means you're automatically growing? Some people know exactly why they sabotage themselves. They can explain every childhood wound in beautiful detail. And then they continue making the exact same decisions. Awareness is step one. Behavior is where your life actually changes. I don't care how insightful your journal entries are, if your calendar still says yes to people your intuition already said no to. That's the part nobody wants to hear because changing behavior is uncomfortable. It costs you your excuses. It costs you your identity sometimes. It even costs you certain friendships because people get very attached to the version of you that tolerated everything. But I'd rather disappoint other people than repeatedly disappoint myself. Here's another thought that made me grow up emotionally. Every time I kept trying to convince someone to see my value, I was accidentally communicating that I hadn't fully seen it myself. Think about it. When you know something is expensive, you don't chase people through the store begging them to buy it. It sits there. And the people who recognize the value come closer. That's confidence. Quiet confidence doesn't audition. It doesn't negotiate its worth every Tuesday. It simply exists. So yes, maybe you're the problem. Maybe you answer texts that should have been ignored. Maybe you keep abandoning your own boundaries because you're afraid someone won't like you. Maybe you keep choosing comfort over honesty with yourself. Good. That means tomorrow can look completely different because your choices can look completely different. And that's the most hopeful thing I know. Stop making yourself the victim of a story you're still holding the pen to. The goal isn't to become perfect. The goal is to become so honest with yourself that your life has no choice but to improve. That's self-respect, that's emotional intelligence, and that's when everything starts getting a lot more beautiful. Love you no matter what.